us, we will be continuing our talk about prophetic interactions. So far we have learned how not to be egotistical when giving advice to anyone, and we also learned how the Prophet used to interact with people around him, and how we can apply while interacting with people that are younger than us, or elders, or even people on social media. And inshallah, today we'll be continuing our topic with Brother Abdul Rahman, but before we get started, we're going to have a Quran station by Brother Fitz.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يسبح لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض الملك القدوس العزيز الحكيم هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة وإن كانوا من قبل لفي ضلال مبين وآخرين منهم لما يلحقوا بهم وهو العزيز الحكيم ذلك فضل الله يؤتيه من يشاء والله ذو الفضل العظيم مثل الذين حملوا التوراة ثم لم يحملوها كمثل الحمار يحمل أسفارا بئس مثل القوم الذين كذبوا بآيات الله والله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين قل يا أيها الذين هادوا إن زعمتم أنكم أولياء لله من دون الناس فتمنوا الموت إن كنتم صادقين ولا يتمنوا أبدا بما قدمت أيديهم والله عليم بالظالمين قل إن الموت الذي تفرون منه فإنه ملاقيكم ثم تردون إلى عالم الغيب والشهادة فينبئكم بما كنتم تعملون.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. All thanks and praise to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for we seek His help and His forgiveness, and receive refuge from Allah from the evil within ourselves and the consequences of our evil deeds. Wherever Allah guides, can never be led astray, and whoever Allah leads astray can never find guidance. And I bear witness of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, this is the last and final messenger. So like the sister said, we've covered quite a few topics. We've spoken about prophetic interactions, how the Prophet ﷺ interacted with his companions, with his families, people behind closed doors. So we've covered a lot of things, and the idea is quite common in most interactions of being compassionate, being understanding, and how to advise others basically also carries that same idea of being compassionate, being considerate of those that are around you. This is the way of Rasulullah ﷺ. Just a brief summary. Typically, as humans, especially in our day, the day and age, and in our routines, we get caught up to the point where we don't focus on those around us. And typically, we just jump to conclusions and assumptions, which is not something that we should do, and it's against the Sunnah, because again, someone may be going through something personal, or even if it's known, that may skew the way that they behave with you. But that doesn't mean that they actually intended to do so. So having that compassion in your heart, having that understanding, and basically how Rasulullah ﷺ dealt with other people, dealt with certain scenarios, or scenarios of ridiculous requests. We talked about that one time, or if it was on how to correct someone. Even him being Rasulullah ﷺ, how he would go about it, how he would approach it, and just to basically put it together, Rasulullah ﷺ, even though he's the Prophet, he would still take a more simple approach to whoever he was speaking to, so that way they're able to take in that information, and it's more well receptive, as compared to putting together or putting forth a scenario that's more complicated, that's more difficult for the person to understand. And I always say this: relatability is credibility. So Rasulullah would talk in ways that was relatable for people, so that way that advice was actually taken, understood, and then implemented. So speaking of advice, today basically is on how to control your emotions, or how to control this. We're going to be talking more so about anger, because this is an issue that we typically have. But basically how to control your emotions or your desires according to the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we'll start off with a hadith where Abu Hurairah in Sahih Bukhari says said that a man came to Rasulullah ﷺ and told him, O Messenger of Allah, give me an advice. O Messenger of Allah, give me an advice. Rasulullah ﷺ said, do not get angry. Do not get angry. And then the man repeated his request 2 more times to Rasulullah ﷺ, give me advice, give me advice. And Rasulullah ﷺ said what? Both times. What do you say? Perfect. Do not get angry, do not get angry. Right? So he said that the total of 1 plus 2 is? He said that the total of how many times? 3. Good. 3 times. 1 plus 2 is 3. Right? With the quiz. So now, why this specific question, or why this specific advice to this question, right? Rasulullah ﷺ perhaps might have understood that this individual, because again we talked about this a few weeks ago, you approach your advice in a way that the person in front of you have to kind of do a little bit of diagnosis, understand what the problem is, understand how this person is. Perhaps that person may have been someone who needed to work on this, but that person may have, like I said, may have needed that advice. But at the same time, this advice, I don't know if you guys know the book, Timeless Advice. It's a book that talks about advice that Rasulullah has given us, the Quran and the Sunnah. And this advice can be used at all times. We also mentioned this is a random dude, not a random dude, but some dude in the middle of the desert 1400 years ago. That advice, one may think is not applicable now, but the advice that Rasulullah gives, what the Quran tells us, what the Sunnah tells us is timeless. Do not get angry. Such a small, simple thing. But we're going to talk about how this affects every aspect of your life. Rasulullah also said, an individual came to him and Rasulullah said the same question, O Messenger of Allah, give me an advice. And said, say I believe in Allah and then hold on to the straight path. So again, this could be that this person needed that specific advice. And also the person who is told to hold on to this, hold on to let's say believe in Allah and hold on to the straight path, that person may have also need that advice in particular. But when it comes to anger, when it comes to emotion, these things bleed into the quality of your life in all aspects. And we talked about this when it comes to advising and being egotistical. We said that being egotistical ruins all qualities of life. When you become that person that's egotistical, when you become that person that is arrogant, that boasts too much, no one wants to be around you. No one wants to hang out with you. No one wants to spend time with you. No one wants to sit with you. No one wants to engage in a conversation with you. The same idea applies over here. If I, get into an issue or get into an argument, and I know that this person will lose their cool, I will do everything it is to avoid you, so that way, God forbid, we do have some sort of disagreement. God forbid there is some sort of problem, it won't escalate. When you have character traits that are similar to shaitan, look at the example of arrogance. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him to make sure you two Adam, right? Out of respect, or whatever it was, Allah's command. Simple and simple. But he said, I'm made out of fire, he's made out of dirt, I'm made out of more superior material, if you want to call it. And I'm not going to crush you to Adam. And that arrogance led him to what? To being cursed for the entirety of existence in and of itself. So small things like this lead to very big things. Now anger. No one wants to be with you. No one wants to hang out around you. And this, of course, is yourself not to control your emotions. But this is the effect that it has. So Rasulullah said in another hadith that the strong person is the one that can knock people down. Right? Physically, emotionally, maybe saying things that are hurtful, but physical strength, someone that can knock someone down. The truly strong person is the one that maintains his self-control when he is angry. So before we dig deeper into the effect that anger has on your life, let's look at what anger, or what a lack of control of emotions, or control of emotions, there on the other end of the spectrum, what this tells us. Same way of being egotistical, same way about being, compassionate. The way someone acts in situations in which someone can get angry tells me all I need to know about that person. Tells me all I need to know about that person. It's easy for me to say follow the sunnah and I say salam alaikum and I smile. It's easy for me to say follow the sunnah and everything is rainbows and sunshine and I can go according to the sunnah. But it's times when things are tough, when issues are arising, when disagreements are present, that one actually shows his sincerity to the deen. You know what I'm saying? Now, for example, since you have used you as an example, right? Now, if you and me we're talking about something, all right? Perhaps, what major are you in college? If I'm asking, your college?
Yes,
Psychology, right? Perfect. You know more about me than science, right? Now, if I come to you and I say psychology says X, Y, and Z, right? But you're like, you know better than me, of course, right? You've been studying this. I don't know anything about all of that. Psychology, what's exactly I don't know anything, right? So I come to you and I say, no, it's like this, this, and this. But you have the knowledge, you have the education, right? And I tell you, no, it's like this. And you get furious and mad because I'm saying, no, this is how it is. You can choose one of two things, right? Oh, the sunnah is in your mind, and let's say, the sunnah is whatever. You can choose, right, to let your ego get in the way and no, I don't want to be told something by someone. Or you can go the route of, you know what, this person is extremely, extremely hard-headed. So hard when he needs to wear a helmet when he walks around, you know? Extremely hard-headed, but you know what? Let him have his moment. I don't want to get into an issue with him, and I'll control my anger, right? It's easy for me to say Assalamu alaikum to you and smile with sunnah, right? And say follow the sunnah, woohoo, right? Carry the sunnah forward, as we say. But it's times when there's actual issue, when there's ego involved, when there's, perhaps someone's reputation involved. It's things like this, where especially as a man, it's hard to take a hit on your ego, right? It's things like this that actually dictate how sincere I am to the deen and to the sunnah. So there's heat, there's heat in the moment. There's arguments erupting, right? I gave a lighter example of psych and what I know about science, what I don't know. But perhaps it's a more serious issue, right? Perhaps it's a bigger issue. When it's stuff like this, when there's tension there, when there's animosity perhaps between an individual, when there's arguments left and right, perhaps even as to the point where it might be even physical. And stuff like this, when an individual can say, you know what, it's sunnah for me to not let my anger get the best of me, and you step back, this shows an actual sincerity to the deen. Because let's be honest, someone who's not sincere to the deen won't follow that example. Won't follow the example of Rasulullah. Islam tells us do not let your ego get in the way. It's times like this when you'll actually see, again, not for us to go and see, okay, this person's good on their deen, that person's bad on their deen. No. Just going to show you. So if you want to be of someone that has sincerity in their religion, in their deen, and a love for the deen, then you control your emotions. So this is what an anger or lack thereof shows us about a person, right? And of course, there's more things we'll dig into deeper as we continue. So the harmful effects of subhanAllah, right? Psychology. So now we're going to get into the psychological aspect of it. So if I say something wrong, you can correct me more, right? So the psychological aspect of all these things. When a person becomes angry, he loses control of his judgment, right? He loses control of his judgment. He may often offend people, and in the process, he can destroy a lot of bridges. A lot of bridges, right? Perhaps I think you should get this talk now, right? Psychology, right? So, harmful, and first of all, let's talk about things, I always like to break into multiple categories. We talk about things that are worldly, because again, it's not that we completely focus on the akhirah, which is really, really important, let's get that out of the way, but we also have to focus on our life while we're in this dunya. Now, having anger, or even we talk about anger, but this idea applies to all sort of emotions, right? Perhaps being too extreme, and like I said, Islam tells us it's also part of the sunnah, it's not do anything extreme. Let's get that out of the way as well. We think typically anything in its extreme is things that are bad. Yes or no? Don't, party too much. Don't drink this too much. Don't do that too much. Don't laugh too much. Don't do this too much. But even on the other end of the spectrum, it's the same idea. If I'm 24/7 in sujood and I have a family, right? I have prayed my mandatory prayers, and I am now neglecting the right that my family has upon me, of spending time with me, of me providing for them, me providing that shelter for them, me putting food on the table. These are all my responsibilities as a man to provide for my family. If I'm constantly in worship, or I'm constantly here doing da'wah, and my family's at home, and they don't know if they're going to have a next meal, that's an issue. Yes or no? So both end of the spectrum for extremes is bad. Same thing applies when it comes to emotion as well. Emotion in any extreme is bad. Now we're talking about anger, but the idea applies to being sad as well. When someone is sad, their judgment is impaired. When anyone has any sort of emotion in extreme, their judgment is impaired. They'll make their judgment based off of whatever emotion it is that they're feeling. Perhaps, let's give you an example. If someone is upset about something, right? They're going to literally go into a plateau. They won't be functioning. They won't be able to be productive. Correct me if I'm wrong. If someone is extremely sad and they're letting those thoughts get into their mind, it'll take a physical effect on them. They may not be eating. They may not be spending time with family. They may not be going out and about. And when you are upset, going out and about, spending time with friends, what? Lightens up your mood. It makes you feel better. So they're digging, they're the hole deeper. They're digging their own grave. So that's one effect that has. If you look into anger, right? Let's say you and I have gotten into an argument, and I let the anger get the best of me. Now every single time I see you, I'm going to go the other way. Because I don't want my ego, But what? That salat that I could have given you would have been hasanat for me. That smile I could have given you would have been hasanat for me. Perhaps I'm nomadic, you're smart. You could have bestowed some knowledge upon me that would have helped me out. I lose it. And we're talking about the benefit, but at the same time, you develop a reputation for being that person that always causes issues. To the point where you get kicked out of facilities. To the point where no one wants to be around you. To the point where the relations that you had outside of your home, they're done. And it starts leaking into your home because you have no one to go outside to. So everyone's avoiding you outside, you're not able to go outside. You get home, you start letting all that, that animosity or those emotions get onto your family, and it ruins your bond at home. It ruins your relations at home. So all these things, right? Domino effects. One thing leads to another, leads to another. That's a lot of it. Often things that we overlook will have that effect. So it'll ruin your relations, right? Being happy to the extreme point too. We know we crack the joke about that friend that always laughs at the wrong time. Unfortunately, I'm that friend, right? So laughing at the wrong time, you do it too much, no one's able to take it at any serious gatherings, right? You're not able to learn anything. You might be detrimenting that's even more. You might be detrimental to those that are around you. You might be harmful to those that are around you. Perhaps that person that's just known to be with you, that person might reap the side effects of you being immature. Any emotion in its extreme is bad. Granted, I'm using hadith that talk about anger, but this applies to everything. Everything is in moderation. And I don't remember the exact scenario, but there was a piece of advice. If someone that has seen this video, perhaps you can chime in as well. Someone said, ask someone for a piece of advice as well, right? Or when I'm upset, what's a piece of advice or something around this line of what's some advice that I can take that I can also use when I'm upset and also when I'm happy? I don't know if you guys have heard this story. There was a teacher, whoever it was, told that individual, the advice is, this time will pass. This time will pass. Now look at the example of when someone's upset. Something is going on in your life. To keep your emotions in moderation. And we know the hadith that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not put any soul through that which we cannot bear. Yes or no? We know this hadith. So whatever it is that you're going through that is affecting you, it is not something that is fatal. It is not something that you cannot overcome. Because we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us and the hadith tells us that whatever I'm going through, I can overcome it. Plain and simple. My belief should be extremely strong in that. So now I know that the situation I'm in, I'm able to overcome it. Perfect. Now that I know what I can do, now that I know that I'm able to overcome it, let me head towards a solution. Let me head towards, fixing this problem. So you're able, that time, that difficulty will pass. Right? You really have to march business. At the same time, to keep your moderation, your emotion of happiness or a positive emotion in moderation, this time will pass. This moment that you're enjoying right now, you gotta go back to reality. That vacation that you're on, as much as hopefully we can spend our whole lives on vacation, we can't. Because what? This time will pass. That raise that you got, that time will pass. The moment you're hanging out with your friends, that time will pass. So keep this in mind when remembering that everything is to be kept in moderation. Now, I don't want to be a party people, but I don't want to say, don't be happy. Be happy. But what else now happens in this emotion, right? We've kind of got our track, but we're going to still talk about this as well. When it comes to any sort of emotion that you are feeling, remember who? Say it again. Allah. Perfect. Remember Allah. Remember who? Allah. There you go. Remember who? Well, you're all you can say. Perfect. Thank you. Right? Remember Allah. Good. Why? Allah's the one that put that problem in your place. Or not to say that Allah's giving you all these problems, but it could be a test. Who placed that test in your life? Allah. Who placed that blessing in your life? Allah. فَاذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرْكُمْ. Remember me and I will remember you. And the ayahs continue. What does it say? Glad tidings to those that are patient. وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا. Beautiful, perfect. Right? Inna ilayhi raji'un. That وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ, glad tidings to those that are patient. الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ, when they are afflicted by calamity. الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ قَالُوا إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. That to verily to Allah we belong and to Allah we will. Beautiful, perfect. To Allah we will return. Now this doesn't say when someone dies. We typically associate this when someone dies, any sort of calamity, right? But this idea applies to calamity, but also at the same time, remembrance of Allah in times that are good. We know the hadith tell us that if you want blessings of Allah, or when you thank Allah for whatever it is that you have, you get more. So when I'm good, when I am having everything it is I want in life is beautiful, right? What do? I remember Allah. Who bestowed that blessing upon me? Allah. At the same time, when I'm going through, when I'm afflicted by a calamity, I remember who? There you go, perfect. No better therapist than Allah. So to keep emotions in moderation, first and foremost, understand that whatever it is, and this is not me saying it because I'm some genius, no. The hadith tell us that whatever it is you're going through, you'll overcome it. That's the first step in emotion moderation. Well, that rhymes. Emotion moderation. Halal words, you call it? Emotion moderation, right? Now, first step is making sure you understand that you can get over it, number one. Number two is you follow whatever it is, the guidelines that Rasulullah has given us for taking that step towards a solution. Do not let those emotions cave you in. Be it happy or be upset, but calamity, right? Keeping emotions in check. After that, it's also important that you remember Allah. Ya Allah, bestow Sina. It's whatever it is, give me a path, make it easy for me. Turn to Allah and Allah will help you. This is to help keep moderation in our emotion. Now, you figure that out, right? So, Rasulullah, now get back to the topic of emotions themselves. So by nature, everyone is different. I'm different. Perhaps I may have less patience than you guys. You guys may have less patience than me. More patience. Doesn't matter. Everyone is built different. Everyone is programmed differently. Everyone is wired differently. Alright? Please, Wallah, by the way, if I say something that's, better about me in sight, so correct me by all means, right? The Rasulullah, a companion came to him, and Rasulullah said to this individual, you have two qualities that are beloved to Allah and His Messenger. Patience and carefulness. These two qualities that Allah has created in you. A person sometimes may go through stressful situations, like sometimes when the person is fasting. If you are fasting, the hadith tells us if you are fasting and somebody tried to insult you or offend you, you should say, I am what? I'm fasting. And why I'm bringing up this hadith, right? Now this is, we're talking about emotions, but anything to keep in moderation, right? Now we go from emotions to desires. We've talked about it previously earlier that we're going to talk about how, according to the Sunnah, to moderate emotions and desires as well. Because desires will play into your emotions as well. These two things go hand in hand, yes or no? Emotions and desires go hand in hand. So when it comes to any sort of desires, things that are halal, by all means, go by it, right? Being competitive, go by it. Look at the companions. They used to be competitive in that which is good. So why am I bringing up fasting? Fasting is not simply, now summer's over so I can't crack my corny joke, but summer is not for us to get a nice summer body, and look nice and look ripped. It's not for that. Fasting is multiple purposes. People typically think, it's because those are less fortunate, we're gonna think on their behalf. No, it's that too, but there's a bunch of other things. Fasting is to increase our consciousness in Allah. Fasting is meant to increase our consciousness in Allah. How so? When you fast, you starve, right? Literally. It's not just fasting, so we'll focus on the hunger part of it first. Hunger is not a small feeling, it's a pretty big thing. If I'm hungry all day, which I am by the way, right? If I'm hungry, I'm not going to be able to function properly, right? I don't know if you guys see that clip about the clip that Brother Ahmed made about the humility thing, right? You know what I'm talking about? That clip? Bro, I was starving at the clip, I was slurring my words, right? I was slurring my words. So it takes over your body. So it's not one small thing. If I'm rejuvenated, if I'm not hungry, I'm able to function properly, I'm able to think properly, I'm able to do everything properly. But if I'm hungry, if I haven't eaten, I'm low on energy, I'm not able to function properly. And that reflects in my actions. Right? So understanding or realizing that hunger is going to be in your mind, number one. Number two, it's not just fasting of the mouth, it's fasting of the mouth in terms of what you speak. It's It's fasting of the ear of what you listen. It's fasting of the mouth of what you speak. Your hands, what you do with your hands, your feet, your entire body, you fast. Your whole entire body and your state of consciousness is to refrain from sinning. Yes or no? Fasting is not just starving and looking nice. No, it's refraining from any sort of sin. If I am fasting and I'm listening to music and I'm going to do everything haram that it is to do, right? Well, I didn't eat, I didn't drink water. No, that's not how it works. If I'm missing out my prayers, my fasting only does so much for me. So fasting is a state of the entire body and the entire consciousness. Now, why am I mentioning this? To control one's desires, you should fast. To control one's desires, you should fast. Because that state of fasting is an increased consciousness of God awareness, of taqwa, of being conscious of God. When you are fasting, your consciousness of your Creator is higher. Why? Because you are in a state where, okay, you know what, I can't do this. You'll think twice before you do anything wrong. That's why in Ramadan, we leave with a high in our iman. Our iman and our actions and everything are top notch. Because I spent 30 days being conscious of my Creator. I spent 30 days standing in front of my Creator. So fasting will help you control your desires. Fasting will help you stay away from that which is bad. Those that are smokers, I always tell them this, fast. They say when Ramadan comes, bro, I swear to God, bro, I don't even think about that cigarette. But when Ramadan is done, khalas, I'm back on it. I tell them, you don't see a pattern. If you're fasting, and if fasting helps you stay away from smoke, keep fasting. Not only are you going to get hasanat from it, but at the same time, you're going to get rid of that bad habit that it is. So fasting will help you control your desires. And this is one of the things that Rasulullah has advised us to do. At the same time, fasting will also help you control emotions. Because again, fasting is not just of the mouth in terms of eating, but also what you speak. So if I'm in front of you, and let's say, I see someone, and I'm extremely mad at them, I want to say every single curse there is in the alphabet, I'm not going to say because I'm fasting. Like the hadith tells us, if someone insults you, offends you, you say, I am fasting, because you are in that state. The hadith also tells us that if you get angry and you're standing, you should what? Sit down. If you're sitting there, you should lay down. Do whatever it is you can do. And I know this is, again, seems like a very simple thing. Perhaps you can give some input in the phone when it comes to cycling, right? So if the hadith tells us, and this also, again, how to control your emotions according to the sunnah, right? When you are angry, you step away from the situation. This is what the sunnah tells us, right? If I am in front of someone and I am upset with them because of something they may have said, or if I'm at home, perhaps it's a spouse, right? And I got into an argument with them. First of all, do not escalate the problem. These small things that we typically argue about are small and petty. So I let go of that situation and I detract myself from that place, wherever it is. If it's, over here in the prayer area, then you go, Father Shurek. If it's at home, you go from one room to another. You drink water to cool yourself off. Because it's also, Shaitan likes when you get angry. You drink water to cool yourself off. If you're standing, you sit down. If I'm standing, I'm going to get mad. All these things, I might bounce off the walls, whatever it is. I sit down. If I'm sitting down, I lay down. Rasulullah does in the hadith. It's not me making this up, it's the hadith. What's up?
I just wanted to add on.
Yeah.
The psychological part.
Yeah.
So the part of the brain that, like when you're angry, you release a hormone called cortisol, and that's the same hormone that's released when you're in danger. That's why, so it raises your fight or flight response kicks in when you're angry. That's why your heart starts to beat when you're upset, because the brain uses the same part for the brain. So drinking water helps calm down, just as you would if you was upset.
Or about that. Alright, perfect. So now if I may add on top of that too, the hadith tells us as well, that when your fight or flight kicks in, right, the hadith doesn't say fight or flight, but the idea stands of when your fight or flight kicks in, you start taking drastic decisions. Yes or no? When I take fight or flight, it's this or that. There's no in between. There's no middle ground. If I see someone in front of me, and my fight or flight is kicked in, I'm either dipped big time or I'm getting at them. Right? This idea of your drastic decision making can then make you do something that you don't want to do. Yeah, did you guys hear what the brother said or no? Did you guys hear what he said about the chemicals in your brain? That a chemical releases, and that chemical kicks in your flight or flight when you're in danger. It's the same thing when you get angry as well. So having that irrational decision making, thinking, you want to call it, that results in, like I said, multiple things. Not only will you make decisions you don't want to make, at the same time, you will say something, right, that will hurt that other person. You will say something that you don't mean. But if I'm angry, how angry I am, what I'm angry about, you do not know. I may tell you, but I'm the one that's feeling that emotion. So you're not able to enter my body and see my heart and my brain and dictate how angry the other man is today. No. What I say to you is what you take at face value. Even if I don't mean it, and I tell you I don't mean it, those words are still going to echo in your brain. Those words are still going to feel it in your heart. Those words you're still going to remember. So when I let my emotions get the best of me, when I let my desires get the best of me, when I let these things happen, you start burning your bridges, and it takes effect on every single aspect of your life. Rasulullah tells us, the Quran tells us, again, those who spend freely, whether in prosperity or in adversity, who restrain their anger and pardon all men, for Allah loves those who do good. And we talked about this multiple times. Islam rewards for things that are small. Last few weeks we were talking about mannerisms, yes or no? Last few weeks we were talking about, oh, if you do this mannerism, then you get this big reward. The hadith or the ayah tells us, Allah loves those that do that. It doesn't say go make hajj, it doesn't say do this, it doesn't say do that. It mentions those who restrain their anger. Of course, amongst other things as well, but those who restrain their anger. Now, we've talked about anger, we've talked about desires. Now let's go into anger itself. But time is when you should actually stand your ground. This is also important as well. This doesn't mean that someone's saying anything to my face, and I told my family, they're physically harming me, and I say, that's simple. No, that's not how it works. Rasulullah tells us, don't be an idiot. He didn't say that, but you should be smart in what you do as well. We're Muslims. We have morals. We have things that we abide by. And of course, there needs to be a lot of leniency. There needs to be an example in our action, but we also have to stand our ground. If you look at those that are the most successful in terms of, if it's an individual at an individual level or an entity level in terms of, perhaps an organization or a person or a company, those that are the most successful are those that have set rules and they abide by those rules plain and simple. This idea of discipline is what elevates you to the next level. Now, we've talked about controlling emotions. We've talked about controlling desires. We've talked about controlling your anger, your being upset, which I must also talk about. But before we continue on to this, being upset, there's nothing wrong with being upset. But when it comes to being upset, when you guys, or men, women, period, whatever it is, when you guys get too upset, when it's something that you let eat you up, right? When it's something that you keep to yourself in your mind, you literally are preparing for your own downfall. You're lowering your productivity. You're stopping yourself. You're putting up your own hurdles, right? Putting yourself in, or you're thinking about solutions. When you think only about problems or this or that, you're literally degrading yourself in terms of, you're not going to be able to get to a solution. You're not going to be able to overcome this. You're not going to be able to do this. You're setting yourself up for failure. So any emotion needs to be kept in moderation. Now, when it comes to actually standing your ground, the Prophet ﷺ did get angry when it had to do with the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When his companions were arguing about the book of Allah, and the Prophet ﷺ got very upset and said, you are playing with the book of Allah while I'm sitting among you, or anything that had to do with Allah. Now, what do I mean by this? When it comes to your deen, there is no compromise. And before I was thinking about this on the way here as well, I was talking about forgiveness, being conscious of Allah, all these things, right? Or also desires, let's retract a little bit because I had this idea when I was driving as well. How does one stop themselves from doing good or bad? First and foremost, I mentioned fasting. It helps you keep conscious of your actions. But another important thing is understanding the mercy of Allah and understanding the punishment of Allah at the same time. A lot of people, a lot of speakers, they make the mistake of mentioning one or the other. Allah stop us from any mistake, myself included, right? They mention one or the other. And this is a very big issue, in my opinion. Right? My humble opinion, this is a very big issue. Why? If I mention the mercy of Allah too much, you're not going to understand the concept of the punishment. It won't keep you in check. Your check and balance will be off. At the same time, if I talk only about punishment, I'm going to be scared. I'm going to be in this little shell. I won't be able to grow as a person. I won't be able to make mistakes. Oftentimes, and I've seen this with my own eyes, not to say you go out and do stupid things and make mistakes, but oftentimes, people, their mistakes is what leads them closer to Islam. If that person only knew the mercy of Allah, you know what, I made a mistake, I can say Allah's all forgiving. Look at the idea of the Christians. They do everything and anything it is under the sun. Jesus died for my sins. Not to be demeaning or degrading to them, but you don't have that sense of consequence. And when you lose that sense of consequence, it's very dangerous. And at the same time, when it comes to understanding the punishment of Allah, oh man, I screwed up big time. But you know what? I want to turn back to my Allah. I want to turn back to the Creator. I want to have forgiveness for my sins. When you understand both parts, that's when you will be able to keep your actions and your emotions in moderation. Now, how does one learn about it? You read the Quran. You look at the example of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This was the messenger of Allah who was told you're going to enter Jannah when you get to the hereafter. No one better to walk this earth than the messenger of Allah. He was the one that cried in front of Allah, to the point where his beard would be soaking, to the point where his feet would be hurting, to the point where his spouses would be concerned for his well-being, of how much he would cry for the forgiveness of Allah. And this is the messenger of Allah. And who are we? We're the average Joe. We mess up all the time. We screw up all the time. So if the messenger of Allah is crying and understands the punishment of Allah, when it's not applicable to him, in the sense of he's going to Jannah straight away, man. May Allah allow us to also go to Jannah without any except say Ameen. Right? This is the messenger of Allah, the best of people to walk with mankind. To walk the face of earth, the best of people amongst mankind. It's crying for the forgiveness of Allah. Cries at the remembrance of the punishment of Allah. Seeks the blessings and the mercy of Allah, the forgiveness of Allah. So this should put in perspective the severity of the punishment of Allah and the endless mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. So that's to put it in context. Look at this. What's up?
I just realized this fits perfectly with the advice you gave earlier about when the person said, give me an advice for when I'm both happy and sad. So when you're happy, remember, Allah's punishments don't necessarily get carried away. But when you're sad, you remember the mercy of Allah. So,
Perfect. That's a good point. It's a very good connection, right? So having that moderation. Now, this is to put it in perspective by hadith. The Quran talks about numerous verses about Jannah, right? About the beauty of Jannah, about what happens when you do this, about the gardens and the rivers flowing and this and that. Read that, understand that, look into the tafsir of these verses, right? Because the face value of the ayah is also extremely important, but these ayahs dig deeper. At the same time, look at the ayah that talk about the punishment of Jahannam, in the shajar al-zaqum, all these things, trees, and you have to eat these fruits out like, all these things. May Allah protect us from all these things that are severe. Read the Quran, pick it up, right? That's a whole other topic for another time. I don't want to get off track too much, but understand it, read it, so that way when you do something bad, the ayah comes to mind. Or, before you do, hopefully don't do that action, the hadith comes to mind, the ayah comes to mind. And when you do good, the ayah comes to mind, whichever is applicable. So that's when it comes to this. Now moving into when times we should stand firm, when there's no real leniency. First and foremost, when it comes to the deen, there is no compromise on the deen. I've said it, I will keep saying it to my last breath. There is no compromise on the deen. And let's see if anyone remembers what I say. You don't revolve your Islam around your life. You revolve your life around. There you go. This basically structures your priorities for you, which was more important. There is no compromise when it comes to the deen. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whatever, and people did say whatever they wanted to him. As harsh as it was, whatever it was, he let it slide. When he was told or asked, rather requested by who? The angel Jibreel told him, you give me your command, I'm going to crush these people with this valley, I'm going to crush them with this mountain. You guys know about that story, right? Crush them between this mountain. But what did he do? He said, let them out, right? Let them be, inshallah. And those people ended up becoming Muslim. When he conquered Mecca, Muslims are the only, if not the only people in all of history to be able to conquer a land, to be able to win a war without bloodshed. How? There was mercy, there was example. The same people that hurled insults at him, the same people that threw things at him, that hurled literally, and metaphorical and literal things at him, his compassion was what resulted in him becoming, or or then become Muslim. That was his example. But when it came to Allah, no compromise at all. Even the companions, he would get mad at them when they were joking about things like this. They were arguing about the book of Allah, right? Inshallah, I'll have if anyone wants the exact story, I can have that pulled up as well. But they basically were not taking it seriously in the presence of Rasulullah, and he got mad at them. So it goes to show us that there's no compromise in the deen. Number one. Number two, there is a limit when it comes to letting people go over you as well. This is the messenger of Allah, this is the best people to evolve for mankind. You know, we are the best people to evolve for mankind, the best of our people amongst us, and the messenger of Allah, right? So his example is a bit different, right? He had people to give dawah to at different time, different scenario. You don't let anyone run over you for nothing. You don't let people use you and whatever it is. Granted, if you do it, it's for the sake of Allah, they use me. But don't let anyone just throw, hurls at you, insults at you. You should have some sort of dignity to yourself. Because it's part of being a Muslim as well. His character development is extremely, extremely important. Number three, family. Family is not something that should be compromised. Of course, I'm talking to you guys as well, but you guys as men. You do not let anyone, no, talk about you, no problem. But when it comes to talking about your family, this is when you stand your ground a little bit. Don't start, robbing him. But you have to stand your ground a little bit, and you have to tell them that this is not something that can be talked about like this. Why do I mention this? Because nowadays everyone's insulting the mothers and sisters and this and that, and the first thing that comes out of the mouth, if you look at one of the most famous curses, if you want to call it, right? But I say it for you. Why? For nothing. Do not let this, this talk about your family, do not let it slide, right? Because this shows that you are a vulnerable target. And wallahi, sometimes, and as much as I hope, that this is an exaggeration, when someone sees vulnerability in your character, especially as men, wallahi opens doors for them to target you. And by targeting, I don't mean only physically, I don't mean only verbally, I mean physically as well. Those that want to do bad, for example, a thief does not go after someone, does not go to a place that has everything locked up in a safe for this. The easiest target, the most vulnerable target is the thing that he goes to first. Yes or no? So you do not want to be a vulnerable target. You are a Muslim. You have set rules to abide by. You are supposed to be compassionate. You're supposed to have that soft side to you. But like the example of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even when it came to his companions, there's certain times when jokes are not allowed. There's certain times when leniency is out the window. There's certain times when no jokes, serious. And we need to be, as Muslims, we should need to have that wisdom amongst ourselves and our brains. It's common sense. We need to know when to be able to decipher scenarios when it comes to having leniency and when it comes to being able to joke around. If I'm laughing with you and you're my boy, right, and I'm cracking jokes with you, perhaps about you, cool and funny. But if I start talking about your family, you stop it right there and then. When I start talking, perhaps it's a non-Muslim friend of yours, right? We need to hold on to our religion. People crack jokes about their own religion all the time. Jesus this, that, It's not things that are meant to be joked about. When they joke about their own religion, even if you don't follow it, you tell them to stop. Because religion is one of those things that's someone's identity, right? And of course, we follow Islam. We also believe in Isa alayhi salam. We believe in Christianity at that point. We believe in Judaism at that point. We believe that these religions came before us, and they hold some validity, but Islam is a religion for the people at that time when it was revealed until the end of the world. But we need to respect others. We need to respect our beliefs. So when someone is laughing, you're joking, you're cracking jokes about this and that, you watch what you say. You watch what they're saying about you as well. This is when we need to stand our ground. By standing our ground, let's retract to a few weeks ago. When I stand my ground, I'm not disrespectful to that person either. Because you can be harsh, you can be stern, you can be strict in your morals and your morals and the way you think, while still being respectful to that person. An example, and this is a very famous example. If you look at LGBTQ, all this stuff, right? We call it the rainbow. If you look at all that stuff, our religion tells us that this is haram. Haram, period, end of discussion. Don't give me, it's no, this story, no. Haram, end of story, that's it. Plain and simple. There's no arguing about it, go talk to the wall, don't talk to anyone, right? These things, and it's all around us nowadays. It's all around us nowadays. We can't go and say that this is haram. We say our scholarship gets revoked and the Twitter account closes, right? And so you get canceled. And we're so scared about cancel culture that we keep our mouths shut. We say, Islam, Islam says this, but I believe this. No. You stand by your deen. You stand by your religion. Look at Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is the message of Allah given. But he stood by his deen, and the companions stood by him for the sake of their deen, regardless of whatever people said. If they were tortured, if they were insulted, if they were hurt physically, they still stood by their deen. So So it's important that we understand that. This example, right? I can tell them, if I tell them, oh, all you guys are going to hell, this and that, of course people are going to get mad at me. It doesn't matter if they're part of this LGBTQ, if they're a regular person. If I'm insulting them, of course they're going to get mad. But if I say, you know what, I don't agree with your action, I respect you as a person, I'm a Muslim, this goes against my religion, but I have a lot of respect for you, and if you need help with anything, as long as it doesn't contradict my religion, I'm there to help you. If I say that to that person, do not think that they're going to be okay with it. Do not think that they might be accepting of my viewpoint. So this is the difference that it can make. Do not let your egos get in the way. Control your emotions, control your desires, and make sure that there's certain things that you do not dispute. There's certain things that have no compromise. And those things that do not have compromise, be respectful, abide by the Sunnah and the Quran, but make sure that you stand by them, but don't be too extreme in it as well. Find that balance. And that's the beauty behind Islam. Every single thing is balanced and it's perfect. And that's the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made for it to be. Our deen is complete. There's no added to our deen. There's nothing to be taken away from our deen. Our deen is the way it is. And if someone doesn't like it, they can deal with it. My deen is my deen. I'm going to be respectful to you. If you have issues with my Islam, come talk to me. I'll clarify those misconceptions, but I'm not moving away from my deen. And our deen says, be stern, but also be compassionate. And being compassionate will increase the quality of life in this dunya and in the akhirah as well. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to increase our knowledge, to allow us to apply everything that we learn. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to be of those that are united in Jannah, the way we're united here right now. Inshallah, before we go into any questions, if anyone has anything, if anyone wants to add anything, questions, comments, concerns, and as I always say, complaints. Anything, inshallah?
Like a little reflection. You talked about like remembering that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in control. And subhanAllah, like we all go through things, you know, I mean, like there's sometimes it's small, sometimes big. But I remember when I was a senior in high school and I was just stressing about college and stuff like that, and then my dad told me, just leave it to Allah, do your part, and then leave it to Allah. It's one of the things that helps me till now. You know, life is stressful, working, job, and career, everything, just life in general. So like remembering that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala literally has your plan. You do your part, you go to school, you finish your study, you pray, you do what you have to do naturally, and then leave the rest to Allah because He's in control. And then stressing and worrying, it's not going to lead to anywhere, probably just affect your body and your mental health. Just leave it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this could be applied to friends, it could be applied to rizq. Allah is the provider. Just leave it to Allah, look for a job, do your part, and everything happens.
And to add on to that as well, 2 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken, or a week ago, you also mentioned about how, and we talked about how everything you do connected to Islam, right? If you come to the masjid right now, this is another form of remembrance of Allah. We're talking about Allah in the Quran and Hadith. I'm not pulling out something from thin air. So this is also part of something that you get hasanat from. Oftentimes, someone that may be really busy, for example, since religion, Allah rewards you immensely, I'm pretty sure this takes up a lot of your time. And we may view it as a job, we may view it as something that brings in some sort of bliss. But you also have to understand that this is something you're doing. Not only are you getting permission from it, but you're also getting hasanat from it. Plain and simple, right? If you guys go to jiu-jitsu class, right? Inshallah, next time maybe if my back heals, I'll come to you guys, right? If you guys come early, next time I got you, I promise, right? But you go into jiu-jitsu class. If you keep in mind, okay, you know what? The hadith says that a strong believer is better than a weak believer, right? And this hadith is not talking about faith levels. It's talking about physical strength. Because if I'm physically able, I'm able to do more for my deen. I'm able to stand up and pray. I'm able to wake up in the middle of the night and pray. I'm able to help people, for example, right? If I see someone lifting something heavy, and I'm not able to pick it up, right? If I see an old lady having a struggle with something to pick it up, right? If I'm not physically able, I won't be able to help her. That's an opportunity to hasanat. If I have it in mind, I want to be a strong believer, the way Rasulullah wanted me to be, and I go to that class, and I learn how to defend myself, and I strengthen myself with the niyyah that I'm doing this because it's the sunnah, wallahi, that's going to be a reward for you. That's going to be a reward for you. So you have to think of every single way as a form of hasanat, like the sister mentioned. You do your part. You do everything that you can, and after that, you chill and you relax. Let Allah do His thing. Right? Allah is the best of planners, and you let Allah plan it. But the important thing is that you do your part. Like He mentioned, you tie your camel and trust Allah. Do your part, and then let Allah handle the rest. And wallahi, that will also, it's a beautiful point that you mentioned, that also helps in controlling your emotions as well. If I go through something, if I'm not able to get into a job, or if I miss out on a job, I give you guys that community college example that I had myself, right? So if I apply for a job and I don't get into it, I have to understand, you know what? This is Allah's plan. Allah's plan is simple, man. Allah didn't want me to get this job, it would have been bad for me. If I think like that, I'm not going to be as upset. I might not even be upset, period. Because I put my trust in Allah. But if I say, oh my God, I didn't get the job, how am I going to do this, that, I'm going to start digging my grave deeper. I'm going to start digging that hole deeper. And I'm just going to keep sinking inside of that hole. So, Jazakallah khair for that good reflection. What's up?
You spoke about standing your ground in terms of like, disrespect and stuff like that.
Right.
This is something that I struggle personally. Where do you say you draw that line from, joking around and where it transfers over into something serious? Like, it's hard for me and my character. I don't like to be angry and I don't like to chastise anybody. But it's very hard to struggle, especially in our society today, when somebody cracks jokes, not to get upset with them or really want to, take it forward.
Correct. If someone, so that line that's to be drawn, like I mentioned, it's important that you keep in mind that you're respectful regardless of whatever side of the line it is, right? If you have to defend yourself, that's different because sometimes, especially things get physical, isn't it, right? So that line to be drawn, remain respectful at all times. Things that are, for example, if you guys can crack jokes with me, I can crack jokes with you, I can shoot a double leg on you, you can shoot a double leg on me, right? That's it. But I can't go to a regular random dude, that I've never said salam to before in my life and shoot a single, It's different. I have, your relation dictates where that line is drawn with certain people. For certain people, I can crack jokes with them. Maybe, perhaps it's not good, but if I crack a joke about your appearance, I got my ears together a little bit. My voice crack jokes about all the time. It's funny, whatever, we go on with our day. But there's two things. Number one, when it comes to, you also have to understand when someone's, they're cracking jokes and they're actually doing it to embarrass you. That's a line that I would draw as well. Right? Do not let people embarrass you. That's number one. Number two, making sure that joke isn't being dragged on too much. The first time it was funny, second time, third time, alright, relax, That's number one. Number two is Islam, right? Everyone has a different tolerance when it comes to jokes, right? Everyone has a different tolerance when it comes to what they say. I can crack a joke about you, some people may laugh, some people may get upset. That line, when it comes, or the other side of the line that's okay, like you can crack the joke, that's really determined. But when it comes to that solid line that should apply to everyone, your deen. First and foremost, your deen, right? Your deen is the most important thing. This is not a joking matter. The Quran tells us about those that go forth and they say, "Oh, Ya Allah, we're only joking." It's only a joke. Islam is not meant to be joked about. Islam is not meant to be something that's funny, right? Islam is to be taken seriously. Islam, you can joke around that about something else, but when it comes to your religion, especially those that are non-Muslims, do not let them crack jokes about Islam. Set that boundary. That's the first line, right? Second line, in my personal opinion, family. Even if it's a joke, if it's a small joke, I don't care. Don't talk about my family. If you want to talk good about them, but crack jokes about them, no. So that line for me personally, is you can crack jokes about me depending on how close I am with you, but when it comes to family, when it comes to your respect, and when it comes to Islam, first and foremost, these lines should be applicable for everyone. Every single person. So these are my personal lines, this is where I would draw the line. And then when it comes to friends, that threshold of jokes is a little bit more, but it still has to remain within limits. Do not talk about your appearance too much. Do not talk about something that someone's insecure about. Do not talk about something that that person is not in control of. These are where I would draw the lines. Hopefully that helps, inshallah. Right? But again, like if it's it's your boy, then it's a little really easy. Any other questions, inshallah, comments, concerns? What's up?
I actually wanted to add on to what you said.
If I was control, that everything I say was hand in hand with like, is there one as a segment?
As far as I know, yes.
Hold on, it's perfect.
I just wanted to add on to what you said because it can be very tough since a lot of us are online now. Social media has become a huge part of our lives, and there's this thing where when you try to stand your ground, like you said, you might be teased or called a snowflake, right? And I have seen Muslims in comments allow this idea of, oh, I don't want to be called a snowflake, so I'll let certain jokes slide. And subhanAllah, these jokes are about the Prophet or about Allah, about the Deen, especially in a way where it's spreading misinformation about Islam. But in the name of, oh, I don't want to be a snowflake, you don't stand up to it, you don't correct it. And just wanted to add on, you don't let social media dictate.
So that's a good point, and I'm going to chime in about something personally into this, right? This will be the last question before we begin then. What I would say is, someone who acts that way, someone who always calls people snowflake left and right, people are snowflakes, yes, they are, please. But someone who's calling every other person a snowflake, someone who's making jokes about things that are not, meant to be joked about, someone who's not serious at all, someone that's extremely immature, this person can say whatever. I don't care what they say. I care about the people who are knowledgeable. I care what the sheikh has to say. I care what my boy has to say. I care what those that are knowledgeable, those that are in places that I want to be. That's the people that I care about. Those are the opinions that I value. People that are respectable, people that are knowledgeable, people that are mature. These are the opinions that I actually will take into consideration. But that person on the internet who lives 10,000 miles away from me calling me a snowflake should not really affect me. But what happens is social media has allowed us to be consumed by others' thoughts. Social media is all a facade, right? The lifestyle you see in people, it's all a facade. The way people act tough, it's all a facade. And we talk about it, keyboard warriors. I guarantee you that person will not say it to your face. So when you think of it like this, I don't care what this person has to say. You do your responsibility as a Muslim. If you see someone attacking the deen, you call me a snowflake, you call me snow globe, I don't care. I'm going to make sure I portray the deen the way it's supposed to be. If you want to call me 10 different names, khalas, add the 11th one too. Right? But I'm going to stand by the deen and I'm going to hold what my deen says and I'm going to make sure that my deen is represented correctly. You want to call me whatever, go ahead. But I do my responsibility in making sure any misconceptions are clear. And after that, don't care what people think. This advice of taking respectable people's opinions, this advice only applies online, but also in person as well. If that random guy that's praying his salah wrong, may Allah guide him, is telling you, brother, your tajweed horrible, you're reading the Quran wrong. Brother, what do you know? Leave me alone, plain and simple. But when the shaykh who leads salah, who is respectable, who's knowledgeable, comes up and tells you on the side, brother, this is the Quran, or maybe the way you're praying or what you're wearing, maybe you should not do that. That's the advice you need to take. You don't take advice from homes, right? I don't mean to get disrespectful, but I'm not going to take advice from someone who's struggling on how to, for example, a business, right? I'm not going to take advice from someone who works Uber now, by any disrespect, on how to make a business when I can take advice from a person who's running a successful business. Yes or no? So you have to make sure you distinguish who you take advice from. Because people will say everything and anything. You can't please everyone, nor will you please everyone, nor should you please everyone. That's an issue, right? So don't let other people or what they say worry you or concern you. Take advice from those that are close to your circle. Take advice from those that are in that position to give advice. And after that, whoever says what, let it be. Right? In through one ear, out the other, and be respectful, but go away. That's my advice, inshallah. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to be of those that learn from this, to apply this into our lives, and we ask Allah to allow us to increase our knowledge, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to be united the way we're united here right now, to unite us in Jannah for those. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. قولوا قولي هذا استغفر الله لي ولكم وجزاكم الله خيرا.
Jazakallah khair everyone for attending. Just a few reminders. August 19th we have our brother's sports nights. It's going to be amazing. You guys don't want to miss it. There's going to be jiu-jitsu.